Okay, thanks for coming. I'm gonna speak briefly about self-sovereign identity and breaking the identity silos. Just a quick introduction. My name is Marnix. I'm a blockchain engineer at Rabobank, Netherlands. We're about the second largest bank in the Netherlands and one of the industry leaders on food and agriculture. We have a dedicated blockchain team, and we do a lot of research in blockchain and all these kinds of topics, in which in our previous experiments and proof of concepts, we were constantly looking for an identity component to bring that solution forward. And so we just decided to spend some more time on self-sovereign identity. A lot more time. Actually, we started 4 years ago, and so we built a lot of knowledge on this field. And we saw that there's a lot of problems in the internet. We don't have a unique or a general identity layer in the internet, and that leads to having your account registered at these various parties everywhere. So we need some solutions, and we also want to give the user back the control over their own data. So that's why we're going to focus on self-sovereign identity. Because when having your own data stored on your own phone or on your own mobile device, you are the hub yourself, and that means that all of these parties can use your data whenever you give consent and whenever they need it. So, just a little example on self-sovereign identity. Right now we have these physical cards, you know, your passport, your ID card, something to go shopping. These physical cards are your own property. You have them yourselves, and you can decide whether you can give them to the parties they need it. So you are in full control of your physical passes. And we don't really have a digital equivalent to these physical cards. And that's exactly what we need. Because organizations don't want to store more personal identifiable information than they need. And after a certain amount of time, they will need to delete your data as well. So it will be lost. So you're not able to take the data with you. And we just want the user to be in full control, and you are not able to be dependent on a central party with your identity. That's very important. So when looking on self-sovereign identity, we took these 10 principles in mind when developing our own self-sovereign identity protocol, which is open source. These are the 10 protocols, 10 principles made up by Christopher Allen. This is the person that actually came up with the idea of self-sovereign identity. And so one of the biggest items of these is, for example, control. That it's very important for you to be in full control of your own data, and also be completely completely independent. Also, we were focusing on portability and interoperability. That is because we saw a lot of self-sovereign identity protocols popping up, and probably in the future there will not be one protocol that will be used everywhere all around the world. So it's very important for wallet developers or for people that receive this kind of data, that they will be able to speak in different languages and different protocols. So if we look at self-sovereign identity and blockchain, we have a lot of questions, because we also want to not only have your physical card on your phone, but we also want to fight fraud. And so that's one thing. How do we check authenticity? And how do we check provenance, if it's coming from the right issuer, from the right data source? Also, how can I prove that I own this card, this digital card? And because we're in the real-time digital world, how can we introduce revocations that also work real-time? So a lot is cryptography and peer-to-peer networking. So a lot of data will be sent from your own phone, which is your identity wallet, to the party that needs your data. So a lot will be embedded inside using cryptography. So with digital signatures, with hashing and so forth. And then the last one is for real-time revocations. We can use the blockchain for that. So blockchain is a very tiny part, but it's really important for the data issuer to revoke the data at a later point. Or actually, to make it invalid. Not to revoke, but to make it invalid. So how does this look like in this decentralized world? We have issuers, holders, and verifiers. So the issuers are the parties that issue your data. So this is the source where your data comes from. This can be the government or a bank or some other institution, or it can be someone relative to you, maybe a family member that's issuing something about you. So there should be anyone that's able to issue anything. So we do need some kind of censorship resistance feature there as well. All right, so and then we have the holder. The holder has the identity wallet, and the holder is able to store all the data that's incoming. The last part is the verifier. So for instance, if I want to book some flights and that company needs my data, my first name, my last name, then I will need to send this data to the verifier. And for that, I will need to give consent first in my identity wallet, and it will be sent back to the verifier. The blockchain keeps track of every credential that has been issued by the issuer. So each credential gets a unique address, and with this address you can also prove ownership. So this is the high-level architecture of how we do our proof of concepts and pilots. So we have an issuer that's actually just issuing the data that they want. And just for convenience, we built an identity API, which is handling all the cryptography, all the digital signing, and the blockchain logic. So these parties are really easy to integrate and to support self-sovereign identity in their own portals, because it's just a matter of 2 or 3 REST API calls to this identity API, and then you're done. So we use standards. We use W3C verifiable credentials. We've been following this for quite some time, and there's also some open source stuff in which you are able to generate and sign verifiable credentials, and also generate and sign verifiable presentations using an easy interface for JavaScript developers. We also use DIDs. We haven't yet supported Universal Resolver, but we're working on that as well. So we want to be able to get identities from different chains as well. So this is how your identity wallet would look like. You would have many credentials from many parties, all stored on your phone, and you have full control of who you share it with. So we are working on 4 use cases right now, which are going to pilot. Actually, it's not really in order, but the Courier wallet, so the third one is actually running right now in pilot phase, using this architecture that I just explained really briefly. So the Courier wallet allows employees, of course, employees, when they need to work at a bank, they need a special certificate, a WFT certificate. And they currently they get this through paper, so they need to, hand it over to their manager, and they need to check if the paper is correct. So we want to digitalize this, and we are working with an educator. So this educator actually issues the digital certificate to the person's wallet, and then when onboarding this user as a new employee in our system, we will ask the wallet to provide this digital certificate. Also, for car rental, we are making our building blocks bigger, expanding the building blocks by scanning a passport with your phone, and also being able to get this passport as a verifiable credential, so you can prove it the digital way. Also, getting a mortgage, you're able to, well, you need to provide a lot of documentation, a lot of information on paper, and we also want to digitalize this process using self-sovereign identity. So we can actually also automatically verify that this information that we receive is coming from government documents, for example. Social housing. So this notion of social housing is for the people with lower incomes. They need to prove that they earn like between 0 and 42,000 euros a year. And we also want to expand our building blocks by including zero knowledge proofs on this use case. So that means that the social housing corporation does not need to process all the raw information, just the zero knowledge proof. So we built some open source stuff. The Universal Ledger Agent allows you to plug in all kinds of identity protocols that you want, also centralized protocols. It's just a generic plugin framework which allows you to support many data sources and many ways of transferring credentials. So we built our own open source protocol for exchanging verifiable credentials. You can find them on the GitHub there. And there's also a community contribution for the Hyperledger Areas framework as well. So we are working on getting those two protocols working together in one single app. So you are able to receive and send credentials using two different, completely different identity protocols. And this is actually a future vision that we want to work towards, because you don't want to have 15 identity wallets or apps on your phone as a user. You just want one app that you like the most and which is able to communicate in many protocols. I think that's it. And there's like 3 minutes of questions, I'd say. So thank you. The question was, if I need to prove my identity, will that be a blockchain transaction? That's not the case. The thing is, the issuer actually issues the credential that will be given to you. However, this credential contains an address, an Ethereum address in our case, and the private key, which belongs to this address, is stored in the wallet of the user. So the private key will be used to sign a proof of ownership when sending this data towards the verifier. So in theory, you can send this verifiable credential that you've received or from other source, but if you can't prove the ownership, then the verifier should not be able to or should not be accepting it. Because the verifier wants to know for sure that you actually are the owner of the data that you send. So it's all peer-to-peer communication and digital signatures generated by the identity wallet. Other questions? Okay, well, I think I did have like a closing slide. Oh, here it is. Sorry. So just feel free to contact me, drop me an email or add me on LinkedIn. If you want to work together, also this identity API that I mentioned before, we're going to open it up. So if you want to get an API key and just want to work with it, just let us know. And we'll just send you some documentation on this as well. Thank you.
Similar sort of stuff, but really focused on the zero knowledge proof side of the protocol in terms of being able to save your various credentials as zero knowledge proofs on your wallet and then show them to various different